Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Do You Believe? We're happy and excited that you're watching. Our information is on the screen. Make sure to contact us. Any questions, comments, anything is welcome. We're happy to have you back, Francesca.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
And Doctor, you're here.
Yes, I love to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Nagy Eskandar is with us. He's a medical doctor. He's a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in England, and he practiced surgery for 25 years. You wrote a book about creation under the microscope. You've been on many TV programs in Arabic, like Creation Answers, The Beginnings, You Created Me a Human Being, and Question Mark. A lot of stuff. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks, David. Yes.
We've been talking about the idea of there is science and there's the Bible. Is there contradiction? What is science? What is the Bible? And we've been through a lot of steps to get here. And now we want to go more into biology, and then maybe after that we'll do geology and astronomy.
We have established that the operational science matches the biblical model of creation, and the evolution proposal is really having some problems with the operational science because it depends on matter or what exists and chance and time and laws of nature. And this cannot produce an organized function, really, in a sense. So what we're going to do today is to start a series of biology, as you will see on the screen now, biology, and then geology, and then astronomy. Obviously, that will take many, many sessions. So we'll start with the biology. And I'd like to show you this video, which explains what is life. So let us watch the video together.
On the fifth day of creation, after God spangled the universe with planets, stars, and galaxies, he introduced something completely new into creation: life. The Bible describes a whole range of things as living, from birds to cattle, from fish to humans, even God himself. Since God is a spirit and alive, this is a clue that life is not physical. But the Bible doesn't actually define what life is. When science textbooks try to define life, they describe DNA, or cells, or chemical reactions. Biology textbooks end up describing what living things are made of, and what living things do. They do not actually define life itself. What happens, for example, when an animal dies? DNA and cells are still in place, but life is missing. Life can't be weighed or measured. It seems to be beyond the tools of science. The non-physical nature of life may explain why biologists are so unsure about which things are alive. In fact, their list of living things does not entirely match the Bible's list. The Bible, for example, never describes plants as living. Instead, it calls them green things. The word living does not appear in the Bible until God made the animals of the sea 2 days after he created plants. The marvelous animals of the air, sea, and land are all described as living things. Where did this mysterious life come from? We can't even restore life to an animal that has died, let alone create life from scratch. The Bible tells us that life is a gift of God. The abundance of living things all around us is a daily reminder of our living God, who is the source of all life.
So this video really explains what is life, because life was introduced in the week of creation, which is a supernatural act of God. And in day 5, the Lord introduced life, living things, which is in the sea and flying in the air. And then on day 6, he created the creeping animals and man and woman as the head of the creation. So life comes from life. Life doesn't come from matter. It has to come from a source of life, because if you have all the components of the cell, you cannot create a living cell. It has to come from another living creatures. And that's why we insist that life comes from life, and that is matching the operational science that we discussed before. So let us just have the unit of DNA, which is amino acids. There are 20 essential amino acids in our body. There are many, many other amino acids, but this is the structure of the amino acid. It's carbon and nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen. And you can't expect nitrogen and hydrogen and oxygen interact with each other and form the amino acids. And the amino acids arrange themselves beautifully to form protein. And protein starts to form cell, and cells start to divide and form you and me. This is the evolution idea of how the life started. We believe that life has to have these components, definitely, but there is a source of life to give meaning and life to all of these creatures. So let me just take you to a complicated structure like the insulin. What we are seeing on the screen here before us is the structure of insulin, which is a hormone in our body, which is essential for life because it burns the glucose to form energy so we can function. It's formed of two chains, and the black part of on the screen here shows the two chains that forms the insulin. And the lighter one is called C-peptide. The lighter one here is called C-peptide that binds them together. So the total number of amino acids in this structure is about 100 amino acids. These amino acids has to be arranged in specific positions. If one amino acid comes instead of the other, the whole thing will not work. So that's how complicated life is. And my question is, can that happen by chance, time, and laws of nature? The answer is impossible. It has to be designed accurately. And this is one example, but we have other things like hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is two parts. Heme, which is iron, globin is the protein. That protein is about 500 amino acids. If you move one amino acid instead of the other, type of anemia will appear. So what is the chance of 500 amino acids arranging themselves by chance without any designer? That is really illogical and doesn't work with the operational science.
So when people try to remake this in a laboratory setting, they can't do it themselves?
No, if they can do anything, they can do it following a structure. So they don't bring amino acids haphazardly and insulin will be produced. We can manufacture things in the laboratory, definitely. But when we manufacture them, we use a lot of intelligence and a lot of machinery, and we know the structure to follow. But what they describe in the evolution events is there is no end product to the natural selection. It's just selecting without really a final product in mind. So we can manufacture things in the lab, definitely, but it has to follow a structure. So it cannot happen haphazardly. And we need the intelligence, obviously, of the scientist who is doing this. Yeah. Now, let me complicate the issue a little bit more. Let us see this on the screen. The amino acids are right-handed and left-handed. And our life is compatible with the left-handed amino acid. So it's like my hands here. They are identical, but they are mirror image of each other. But if you put them opposite each other, they cannot match. They are not like this. So the right-handed amino acids called dextro, the left hand is called levo amino acids. Most of our proteins are formed of levo, the left-handed amino acids. So even by chance, if you have the amino acids, it has to be the right type, it has to be left-handed, and it has to be in the right position, and it has to have enough number to form different proteins. That cannot happen really by chance and time and laws of nature. It cannot. It has to have a designer, and this designer must be very, very intelligent and almighty powerful.
So you're trying to convince us that there has to be a God or a designer to produce anything. Basically, you're saying from anything that's basic to anything so complicated. So what happens if you take that designer out? If there is no designer, are you saying all that can't happen?
Exactly, because it will be only chance and time and laws of nature. So the chance cannot really design anything, because by chance it can come in the wrong position. It can be the different type instead of the right-handed, it can be the left-handed, coming in a position which is not the right one, so the whole thing will not function. So we have to have a designer, and this designer has to be intelligent and almighty to be able to do that.
But doctor, if enough times something happened like that, where you said by chance things come together and they'll form the wrong thing maybe a bunch of times, but at some point, by chance, they will form the correct protein synthesis.
Okay,
right?
so you expect the chance to form something wrong, and then the chance decides to change that to something different, different. You know, you need to have a chain of reactions and no wrong thing happens in between. Like, if you want to form this type of proteins, you have to have the first step right. The second step can be wrong, but then reselected. You have to assume that there is no lethal structure in between that dissolves the whole 6, 7 steps that took place earlier. So if you're thinking that our body, this is one protein I was talking about. We have hundreds of proteins and thousands of them. So if you expect all of that to happen by chance, it's really a big imagination here. So by chance, my eye will be one eye in front and one eye in the back. And that will correct itself. What is the reason of correcting itself? What is the power that changed and correct itself?
Well, couldn't you say that natural selection, it wouldn't be advantageous to have one eye in the back and one eye in the front?
Exactly.
Yes.
But natural selection selects from what is available. It's not a creative power. Natural selection selects of what you have, but it doesn't really have the ability to create something new. So all these components needs a designer to be able to make sense of all of that. And those have to work all together with each other at the same time. So I need my kidney, I need my heart, I need my lungs, I need my circulation, I need the skin to cover all of that. By chance, all of that happening and coming together, that needs a massive amount of faith, really, to believe that chance can do that. It's more logical to believe that there is a creator who can make these things together.
Sure. Let's think about that for a second. We'll take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like a copy of this episode, please call 714-709-4300 or email us at info@alkarmatv.com. You can also visit our website at www.alkarmatv.com. Also, you can write to P.O. Box 3610, Seal Beach, California 90740.
Welcome back to What Do You Believe? And we've been talking about, is there a designer? Can all this complication come about with chance? Think about what do you believe, and let's discuss that a little bit more so it's clear for us. Is there a designer, or was all this complication happening by chance?
Exactly, David. Before the break, we spoke about the amino acids and the different types, and they have to be arranged in the right sequence so they can function. And the possibility of chance doing all of that really is nearly nil. So we have really to think about the Creator God as the Bible describes him. Let me just give you another example. What we see on the screen now is something called the Krebs cycle. This Krebs cycle is taking place in each cell of our body, which is in a place called mitochondria, and that is to produce the energy. And the idea is to form something called adenosine triphosphate. And when it is reduced to adenosine diphosphate, it brings the energy out. This is a very complicated cycle, and it has to work exactly. We cannot allow any chances in here at all, because that will destroy the whole mechanism and nothing will happen at the end. There was a little boy who was born in England a few months ago, actually, and he has a very rare genetic disease called mitochondrial depletion. That means this mitochondria, the powerhouse in the cell, is not functioning. As a result, with all the modern technology and all the expertise from all over the world. They couldn't really help this little boy, and unfortunately he died. So can you imagine the energy in all our cells? We have trillions of cells in our body, and they need this Krebs cycle. Do you think that can happen by chance, by time and laws of nature? It's very difficult to imagine that. In order to believe in chance and time and laws of nature, producing something complicated like the Krebs cycle, you need massive amount of faith and trust in chance. And that is really, again, is the operational science.
If I'm going to interrupt you for a second,
Sure.
we're following what you're saying, but I know that you've read and researched a lot of very, very smart scientists that actually believe that this happened by chance. If you don't mind, just tell us in a way, how could that be happening from their perspective in terms of, because we study in school, we hear about it, so it's not something that we made up, we didn't, but so how does that work?
I think you need to ask them that question, not me, but I'll try to answer on their behalf in a sense. They started by the assumption there is no God, and they have a complicated life, and they wanted to explain how this complicated life came about. So they started to put assumptions. You remember the quote that we used some time ago in our series of these scientists who said, even in any explanation is not logical enough, we will not allow a divine food in the laboratory. So they want to exclude God from the equation, and they try to explain biology and life. And we have to start with the big question to all of them, how life started. Life has to come from life. Life doesn't come from all these components. If you have all the components of a frog, you cannot make a frog. So that's a big question, and they don't answer it, unfortunately. I haven't seen any proper answer to that question. But from the biblical perspective, God is life. He is the source of life. He can give life. Because, as I said, if we have seen as well in the little clip that we have watched in the first episode, in the first part of this episode, even if the animal dies, still you have the cells and the DNA, but life was taken away from this. That's completely different from the plants. Plants are packages of energy to be used by humans and to be used by animals and birds. And it's very interesting, actually, in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 1, he spoke about the diet of the early man and all the creation at the time before the death came as a result of disobedience of Adam and Eve. So Adam couldn't kill a chicken and have it for lunch because there was no killing. But the food originally, as the Bible describes in Genesis chapter 1, was plant and vegetables for both man and for the birds and for the animals.
You're asking us to be vegetarian now? Or?
No, not really. Not really. Because that's very interesting, David, because what happened after the flood, in the covenant that God made with Noah and his descendants, he said, I give you now the animals as a source of food, like I have given you the plants initially. But these animals have to be slaughtered properly, and the blood will be shed completely. So if you read the Bible properly, you will find really the truth. You find logic, you find science. What I mean by science here is matching the operational science that we experience every day. So this is the Krebs cycle, and it's very important, it's essential. It cannot happen by chance. All these chemical reactions that I showed you on the screen, do you expect them just to happen by chance? You need massive amount of faith to believe that. Let me take you to the cell then. We'll have the diagram of the diagrammatic presentation of the cell, and then I'll show you the complicated structure of the cell. We'll make it simple first. We have the nucleus, and this is the nucleus here. We have something called the cytoplasm, which is filling the cell. And we have the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is very important. It's a guard allowing sodium to go out and potassium to go in. And there are gates and pumps working on this structure, which is amazing and beautiful to study. We'll not go into detail. I'm just trying to whet your appetite about this wonderful, wonderful structure of the cell. And this is the mitochondria. That's represented the mitochondria that I spoke about, which is the powerhouse in the cell. And if this Krebs cycle is not taking place, the cell will not function. And I told you about this little boy called Charlie, who unfortunately lost his life because there was depletion of the mitochondria. So this is the simple structure of the cell. The nucleus is the head office. So the chromosomes are in the nucleus, the DNA and the genome is in the nucleus, and the DNA does not leave the nucleus, but it forms copy of his instruction with the messenger RNA, which goes to a place called ribosomes. And in the ribosomes, the ribosomes are able to read these instructions and form the protein. Do you expect all of that to happen by chance, time, and laws of nature? It really needs a massive amount of faith to trust in that. Let me show the complicated structure of the cell. This is the complicated structure of the cell. You can see it on the screen now. And this is called the organelles inside the cytoplasm. And it's just marvelous and wonderful to study all of that. In the program, we're not going to go into detail, obviously. But I just wanted to give you the simplest structure. And then this is the picture of a complicated structure. And there is more and more of this stuff inside the cell. Let me take you to another example of the complicated structure. And this is the blood coagulation mechanism. We'll see that on the screen. This is how the blood clots in our, when I cut my finger here, I need this wound to heal. And if it doesn't clot, I will bleed to death. In order for this to happen, we need 13 factors interacting with each other, as you can see on the screen now, very complicated structure. And if I'm missing only one factor of them, I will bleed to death. Like the people with hemophilia, they are lacking factor number 8. And factor number 8 discovers A and B and C. So can you imagine these 13 factors forming themselves by chance to achieve this clotting mechanism, which is essential for life? And I don't want that clotting to happen while I'm living and there is no cut in my finger, because if clotting happens inside my body and block one important artery, I will die. So there is a mechanism to keep the blood flowing without the clotting inside my body, but when I need it to clot, the mechanism will start. I think that's amazing. You need massive amount of faith to believe in chance and time and laws of nature producing mechanisms like this. And there are so many examples. But I'd like you to see this little video, which really shows how the clotting mechanism will work. And there is platelets, when there is a cut in my finger, for example, there is chemical reaction which will invite the platelets which are circulating in my body to come to the site. That's the first call. And when they come, they change their shape to fill the gap. And then they interact to bring all the 13 components to come and work. I think this is just an amazing structure. Let us see the little video together.
In a first step towards clot formation, platelets are recruited to the site of vessel injury by now exposed molecules of the vessel wall, such as collagen and von Willebrand factor. This factor mediates the linking of platelets to collagen via a specific receptor in the platelet membrane. The resulting change of shape of the platelet from its resting state into the dendritic form indicates activation. The activated platelet in turn releases prothrombotic molecules such as adenosine diphosphate, ADP. By binding to its receptors, ADP induces aggregation. And recruits further platelets to the site. Thromboxane is another important mediator of platelet activation and aggregation. Under its influence, the platelets cross-link with each other. These interlocking mechanisms cause platelet activation to snowball. The clot grows rapidly. Activated platelets also trigger the coagulation cascade and thus the formation of thrombin. Thrombin, in turn, stimulates platelet activation even further, a continuous feedback loop. Additionally, thrombin induces the formation of fibrin for the mesh stabilizing the clot. The self-reinforcing process of platelet activation, crucial in the formation of blood clots, is an obvious therapeutic target in conditions caused by inappropriately triggered blood coagulation.
I think that video shows us how complicated this process is of coagulation, and it's essential for life. Without it, we will lose our life if we injure ourselves and bleed.
Great.
That cannot come with chance and time and laws of nature.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Francesca. Well, apparently we all need a lot of faith to believe in what we believe. And C.S. Lewis said that faith is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted in spite of your changing mood. So, what do you believe? We'll see you next time.